Hello and welcome, welcome. I'm Rosa Jones, LPC with Freedom Support Services.
I'm Pragya. I'm a resident in counseling here at Freedom Support Services.
Yes, and we are just so delighted to be here with you all today. Today on our vlog, we're going to be talking about burnout. Okay, it's a real thing. Now, if you don't know who we are Freedom Support Services, and we help professionals and pre professionals live their best lives. And so, we're ecstatic to be here with you today, just sharing some information and empowerment and things that we believe that will help you no matter what field you're in. Maybe you're a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or a therapist like us, or a stay-at-home parent or an engineer. It doesn't matter what type of work you're doing. We all face some some challenges that are sometimes unique, but also very common across the professions. And so today we're going to talk about burnout. You want to make sure that you find out more information about us on our website at www.myfreedomss.com, in addition to following us on all social media platforms. Just so you know, in regards to our services, we offer individual counseling, couples counseling, psychiatric services, and medication management, in addition to group therapy. So thank you all so much for being with us. And today we're going to talk about burnout. So Pragya, our resident in counseling, is going to have just a little conversation with me about burnout for professionals. And so my first question, Pragya, can you tell us what is burnout, right? Can you define burnout for us? Because I think it's one thing for people to be tired, and we all know what it means to be tired and what that feels like. But burnout is something different. So can you tell us a little bit about burnout and kind of like what that actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. So burnout is kind of like a long-term period of stress that just really isn't going away. And so what that really means is that we have short-term stress, we have like kind of like a medium long-term stress, and then we have chronic stress. So burnout has kind of reached that chronic stress stage and it's just not going away. Everyone's kind of symptoms are different, right? So, like Rosa said, some people feel extremely fatigued, right? Overwhelmed. Maybe you're just like not feeling the same kind of joy that you were before with certain things that you like doing. Anxiety thoughts and feelings and symptoms, right? The list goes on, and everyone's so different. So make sure that you're always listening to your body as well. That's what we always like to say.
Absolutely. That's such a great description. Like, we've got some stress and pressure, but it's kind of on a spectrum, right?
Yes.
To some lower things, to some things that are kind of chronic. So, talk to us a little bit, Pragya, about what are maybe some of the signs that somebody might be burned out. All right.
Mhm.
And it could be, as a professional, it may be related to your job, or it could be related to just your life in general, things outside
Yeah.
of your job. But what are some of those common indicators that somebody might be burned out?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is irritability. It might just be like frustration within yourself, with those around you, right? Those social events or things might seem really draining to you. Apart from that, again, that overwhelming feeling, right? So, no matter what you do, that to do list is never getting done, right? So that's a huge one, I think. Apart from that, it might be just feeling like your heart's racing, right? So your thoughts are really foggy. That fogginess can also concern, our concentration, right? And if our concentration is not there, then again, it adds to that overwhelming feeling. So again, like it's so different for everyone, but I feel like that general idea of just not having that like enjoyment for things that you used to have, even for work, it just isn't there as much anymore. It just seems draining. It just seems like another thing that you have to do.
Yeah, that's really great. And as you were talking, it made me think about a lot of professionals who are in the helping fields, like teachers or police officers, clergy, therapists, doctors. Um, Many times, we have chosen to work in these fields because we really do deeply care about people,
Hmm.
right? And we want to help them to improve the quality of their lives. Um, but I have found in my work that some of us as helpers can sometimes take our helping too far.
We can.
And
Yeah.
actually, our helping becomes hurtful. Can you talk a little bit about that for those of us who work with other people and like it's beautiful work, but
Mhm.
what are maybe some things that you've seen or you could say for people who are working with other people and how burnout can kind of just sneak up on you?
Yeah, I almost actually want to use myself as an example.
Go
I
ahead.
used to be I used to be a teacher before I kind of entered this counseling private practice kind of career. And as a first year teacher, especially during COVID, right? There was, of course, there's this phenomenon of we always want our kids to do best, but they can't do their best unless we show up as our best, right? So that means putting in extra hours, perfect lesson plans, right? Community within a classroom. The list goes on, right? And at first, I was so excited to do things, right? September comes around, you have a classroom, you have your kids, you've worked so hard for this degree, you have all these creative lesson plans. But as the year goes on and the responsibilities build, but you're also trying to figure out your identity as a teacher, it slowly starts to become draining. And that draining feeling is kind of like almost like a dread, right? So then showing up to work, yeah, you show up at the time that you need to, but then are you sincerely enjoying doing those things, right? So for me, one of the first things that I noticed was I always used to love prepping for activities, stickers and this and that. And slowly, I just hated doing that. It just became another task. Apart from that, I felt like I had no time for things that I love to do for myself. So whether that be, going to the gym, or I felt like, just hanging out with my friends or my family, those things became more and more difficult because I had no more energy to give. So, for those that are in helping professionals, I think those symptoms just creep up on you. And sometimes we have the self awareness to acknowledge that that's happening. But then there's other times where it takes some time for it to build up. And then we have to acknowledge it because it's become so severe in our lives. But the bottom line is that if you're pushing yourself, you're putting in 100 and 120%, 200% every day, is that sustainable at the end of the day? And the answer most likely is going to be it's sustainable short term, but not long term.
Oh, that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And
Mhm.
that last question there is this sustainable? For the short term, yes, giving 120% can be sustainable. But for the long term, no, it cannot be. And, that is one of the things that I have learned about burnout. I think that is so important for us to talk about and to be aware of as professionals. It is most people's desire to do the very best that they can in the work that they do. However, if we are consistently pushing ourselves way beyond our limits and we're not ever recognizing how to realign ourselves, burnout will just be a cycle for us. We'll just go from one cycle of burnout, we would crash, and then we go into another cycle of burnout. And so, when it comes to burnout, one of the most important things for us to recognize is that you can't come out of burnout by taking a nap. You don't come out of burnout by going on vacation. You don't come out of burnout by implementing self care activities. You come out of burnout by changing the way that you live, by making a commitment to allow who you are and what you need as a human to be a priority and finding ways to connect with yourself and reconnect with yourself every single day. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts about that, Pragya?
I think you just took the words right out of my mouth. It's true, though. You can't just put a band aid on burnout and think it's going to heal it. That's just the bottom line.
So good. So, this I think is such an important conversation. What things can or what ways can a therapist help somebody who may be struggling with burnout? And for teachers, for example, and maybe school-based clinicians or even clergy who are serving family, it's the beginning of the fall. And so
Yeah.
a lot of times there's a lot of energy and excitement around that, but we all know that that quickly can go downhill.
I
as the weight
can.
and the pressure of our roles and responsibilities pile on. Can you
Right.
talk to us about when it comes to figuring out how to shift in our lives so that we're not cycling in and out of burnout? How can therapy help? How can a therapist help?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I did when I first kind of started off as a clinician here at Freedom Support Services was that I kind of thought of what well being means for a client, right? And so when I really say well being, it doesn't just mean, oh, what self care are you doing for yourself? It also means, well, how are you showing up for yourself? What are things that you're telling yourself? What is your awareness? How are you exploring what your needs are at that season of your life, right? And over time, it kind of developed into this like thing where stress is so prominent in everyone's lives. So then, how are we managing it? So I think therapists in general, what we can definitely do is talk about the factors that are affecting you, right? Sometimes all you really need is talk therapy, but also sometimes you need strategies. And so we can provide you with those strategies. But here's the thing, we can provide you with those strategies, but it's what you need to do. You actually need to put them into practice then. And after that, when you come back to your therapy sessions, we can talk about what did work and what didn't work to help you out with that process even more. Apart from that, even just having that kind of support system outside of like your close friends, your family, and stuff can also be super helpful because sometimes you just want that unbiased perspective or another space to talk about things that are going on for you. So I think therapy overall, and this is how I like to say it to my clients, is that it's just this space for you to be you and learn more about you. So it's an hour that you're setting aside every week, 2 weeks, to help yourself, to work on yourself, to be yourself, just like you expect the people that you help to be able to expect that from you. So do that for yourself as well.
Such great advice. And I love your definition of like, what is therapy about? Why? It's just a space for you to be
Yeah,
you. And sometimes even slowing down enough and doing something like that intentionally for yourself can be just the thing that helps you start to pivot in a healthier direction, right? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So as we wrap up, Pragya, I want to know, inquiring minds wants to know, and I will answer this too. What is something that you do to keep yourself out of a cycle of burnout? Let me rephrase it. First, what are like the flags that, oh, I'm heading towards burnout, and then
Mhm.
what do you do about that?
Right. So I tend to get really tired. So I just want to sleep all day. And I'm just not as happy. I like to smile. I have smile lines, and I love it. I'm so proud of them because it just means that there's a lot of happy moments in my life. And so it just kind of like changes how I view things. And I don't want to talk to people. And that's the other thing. Apart from, my job having to talk to people, I just don't want to talk to those around me. And that's, my biggest three signs of like, okay, girl, you got to get it together. So one thing that I've really done, I can say truthfully, since April or May of this year, is that I've stuck to a really good schedule. So I don't start work until a certain time, which of course, blessed to have that flexibility so that in the morning I can do what I need to do to get myself going. So that means going on a walk, having a goal and going for that walk, spending time with my dogs, pet therapy, strongly believe in it. It's a wonderful thing I think that exists. And apart from that, starting off my day by just welcoming myself into my space,
Hmm.
showing up how I need to. So if I acknowledge I'm only at a 60% today, well, how am I going to use that 60% worth of energy to last through the day so that I'm not, having those symptoms and maybe putting it on someone else or this or that. So I think awareness, and for me, that physical exercise, some sort of it, is just super, super helpful.
Oh, that is so good. So good. I would say for me, I have began to notice for me flags for burnout. Some of it is similar. It's definitely fatigue, like
Mhm.
needing to sleep longer than what my body normally requires.
Mhm.
So usually if I get 7 hours, I'm good. If I find myself leaning more into 8, it's probably a sign that I need to scale back in the level of activity in my life. The other thing for me is difficulty concentrating. Like I'm a
Mhm.
very, very focused person and I
Mhm.
multitask and do lots of different things.
Yeah.
and I can just, do the things and stay on task and, get it done. When I get to the point where I can't do that, that is also an indicator to me that I am beyond my capacity. And the way that I respond to that is, I love what you said. It's going back to my schedule. Sometimes I make temporary modifications to my schedule to make space for my body's need for recovery. Right. And so instead of going into the gym at, 6 o'clock, 5 days a week, maybe 2 of those days I go in the afternoon instead. Right. I actually will start also paying closer attention to my schedule because sometimes I do work in the evenings. And so noticing if I've got evenings where I'm working 2 or 3 hours, then I will actually force myself to back off for 2 to 3 hours during that same day.
I love that, Rosa.
Yeah, because I've noticed it's one thing if I'm working during the day and I've already put in 7 hours and then I've got 3 more appointments. It's a 10-hour day.
It's long. Yeah.
That's long. And, and if you do, like you're saying, we are blessed in the work that we do to have some flexibility, more flexibility than most.
Yes.
But I kind of have learned to notice, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm already working 3 hours tonight and I'm already scheduled for 6 today, maybe I need to give an hour and a half or something back to myself so that when this day is over, that fatigue isn't spilling over into the next day.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So I really think that, overall, it's really important for you to pay attention to yourself. Like Pragya was saying, it's so uniquely different for each person. But we got to do the work of learning how to notice ourselves, right? And then to respond to ourselves. That is such a major act of self-care and self-love.
Absolutely. And I think self-love is also, I talk about this with my clients. Self-love isn't just self-love. There's so many components to it. So just remind yourself on those tough moments. You might be practicing self-awareness, but your self-kindness isn't so good. So use that self-awareness tactic that you have to get to a level of self-kindness that you want to practice.
Mic drop. That's like a whole bar, right? It's one thing to be self-aware. It's another thing to be kind to yourself. We need both. We need both. Wow. Well, Pragya, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to break this down for us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
What a wonderful conversation. And we want to remind you, if we can be of service to you, we provide mental health counseling services for people in the state of Virginia in person and telehealth. And all you got to do is check us out online at myfreedomss.com. We would love to help and support you. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.